Welcome to the Circular Exchange, where leaders come together to shape the future of the circular economy. My name is Allen Langdon, CEO of Circular Materials and your podcast host. In each episode, we're bringing you conversations with the people driving progress and innovation in recycling and extended producer responsibility across Canada. Together, we're exploring what it takes to build a system that supports both people and the planet. Today, we'll be diving into the importance of empowering the next generation through recycling education in schools and beyond. Today's students are tomorrow's environmental leaders. To help us explore this topic, we're joined by leaders of 3 education organizations that are also value partners of Circular Materials. My guests today are Jeff McDonald, Executive Director of the Gaia Project, Tova Barokas, President of Earth Rangers, and Sierra Frank, Co-Executive Director of EcoSchools Canada. There's lots to discuss today, so let's jump in. I want to welcome you all to the conversation, and thanks to each of you for joining us.
Great to be here.
So maybe just to start, I'll give you an opportunity just to kind of each introduce yourself and give us a little bit more information about your organization. And maybe, Sierra, I can go in reverse order of introduction and ask you to start off.
Great. So my name is Sierra. I'm the Co-Executive Director at EcoSchools Canada. EcoSchools is a national charity that works with K-12 schools. We also work with school boards, partner organizations, and communities around the country to support environmental learning and climate action through our bilingual certification program.
Awesome. That's great. Tova?
Sure. So I'm with Earth Rangers. Earth Rangers is the kids conservation organization. So we run live assemblies in about 900 elementary schools across Canada every year. And we also have an app that gives kids the ability to take on environmental projects in their households and in their communities. We have about 50,000 members and 350,000 alumni across Canada. So we're the largest kids environmental organization in the world. And it's really all about getting kids excited about protecting the environment and giving them a sense of agency. And we also do a lot of work around the intersection between the environment and mental health, kind of understanding that kids are hearing a lot of negative news. And it's important for them to still feel a sense of hope and optimism for the future.
It's fantastic. And in terms of the app, is it simply called Earth Rangers, or is there another description for it?
Yeah, no, it's called the Earth Rangers app.
Awesome. So certainly encourage as many people as possible to download that app. Jeff, maybe just we'll end with you and give us a bit of background on the Gaia Project.
Yes. Hello, Alan. My name is Jeff McDonald. I'm living on the East Coast in Fredericton, New Brunswick. And the Gaia Project is a charity based here in New Brunswick. We've been working with schools for 15 years in the region to help youth take action on climate change through hands-on learning. I'm also a teacher. I'm a part-time university instructor, and I'm a father of 2 young kiddos. But the Gaia Project is really focused on trying to bring that climate education and real-world action to schools. Last year, we worked with over 70,000 students in the area and 230 schools in New Brunswick. And of that, about 5,000 students were engaged in our Trash Tracker program, which is a waste audit education program, getting really hands-on with everything we're going to talk about today.
That's awesome. And, I think from a circular materials point of view, I think as I talked in our kind of preamble, from our perspective, these partnerships are incredibly important to us. We're conscious that we're slowly moving across the country and rolling out programs in different jurisdictions to make recycling easier, and certainly want to educate to all age groups about the importance of recycling. But I think especially with young kids, there's a real opportunity to instill in them just the benefits of recycling and recycling properly, and the benefits both from an environmental perspective, but just in managing our materials more appropriately going forward and finding ways to reuse these materials again and again as we shift from that kind of linear to circular economy. But maybe just a kind of last question on background is maybe for each of you, what got you first interested in sustainability, recycling, and the work you do? And maybe Tova, I can get you to kick that question off.
Sure. Well, I've been at Earth Rangers for just over 16 years now. So the vast majority of my career, I kind of fell into it, to be honest. I was a fundraiser and working in kind of the film and media uh, sector. And then I was recruited to Earth Rangers and just like really fell in love with the organization, the impact. I think, people always ask me like if it's depressing to work in sustainability or kind of the environmental sector, given everything that's going on in the world. But I always say that I have like the most hopeful job that exists in the environment because every day all I see and hear about are like the amazing efforts and actions that kids are taking. So it's a really inspiring and motivating job, and it gives
Absolutely.
me like a lot of hope for the future. So I'm always excited to share that with people because I think people sometimes get the wrong impression of what it's like to work in the environmental NGO space.
I totally agree. And I think, even at Circular Materials, I think we're so embedded in this significant change going on across the country. I think we just feel, I think incredibly motivated by opportunity. So glad to hear that you have that as well. Maybe Sarah, we can go to you next.
Sure, thanks. And I love this question. It's always great to reflect back on kind of my life and, how I've gotten to where I am. And, these days I have people who are in post-secondary kind of looking at the career that I have and asking how I got here. So it's a great opportunity to reflect. And, I had a lot of opportunity to be outdoors when I was a kid. I went camping. I went on canoe trips. My dad was an avid gardener and I was able to spend a lot of time outdoors with him, just watching simply like a seed grow into a plant and then be put into a backyard compost bin and turn into soil. And I think that it really speaks to the fact that it's not an extraordinary story, but when you bring students or young people outdoors to connect with the world around them, they want to care and protect for it. And, the environment and sustainability has been a part of my world, like my entire life, all through elementary and secondary and post-secondary. It was a focus of my education. And then throughout my professional career over the past 20 years, this is what I've been doing. And my first official job was actually like in the not-for-profit environmental education sector, was actually helping to oversee waste-related education within a regional municipality. Awesome. Yeah, so deep understanding and connection to sustainability and recycling, and have to really echo what Tova said. It could be hard, but it's really empowering and feels really good to come to work every day and do the work that me and my team and the people around me do.
So awesome. Jeff, maybe you can just wrap up.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really interesting, Sierra. We always ask ourselves that same question about our students and even our staff. Why are we connected to the environment more so than others? Myself, I came in a little bit different. My passion lies more in education and curriculum development. I was a teacher for 5 years here in the area, did my master's in curriculum development, and worked a lot of jobs around youth crisis and sort of different type of profession outside of environmental education. So in 2018, when I joined the Gaia Project, I had to kind of catch up with what was going on with climate change, with sustainability. And funny story about this, actually, the first time I went and observed a Gaia program, it was a school in St. John area here. I was able to witness our trash tracker program in person. And there was actually a film crew there because we were filming sort of our 10-year celebration video. It was a whole big production. I was kind of on the sidelines supporting and trying to figure things out. And these kids, they would have been in grade 4. They were so excited to get on the gloves, sort through the waste, categorize it. One of them was so excited that he actually vomited in the waste bin in the middle of the class. He was so worked up, so excited to do it that he just exploded, and a teacher took him out, calmed him down. He came back in and completed activity. But I was like, wow, okay. First impression, this is a very engaging, exciting type of activity to be doing, and students are really fired up about it, even at that age level. So I was thrown right to the wolves, you could say.
That's awesome. It's awesome. It's so interesting to hear that, because I think your story is unique coming from that curriculum development background. But of course, pretty instrumental in developing things for the Gaia Project to have that background. So appreciate that. I just want to say, I think, and I said this before we got on, I'm super excited that we're partnering with like-minded organizations that are committed to recycling education programs designed for youth in classrooms across Canada. From our perspective, as we started to build out our promotion education plans, education in schools was kind of a top of mind thing, both for ourselves and certainly a question that our board members were asking us at the beginning. And I think as we looked at the landscape, I think the initial thought was, what should we be doing on our own? And then I think as we did more research and just saw the kinds of programs already in place, it seemed like a bit of a no-brainer to partner with organizations like the ones here on this call and this podcast, because you already have, deep roots within the education system. You've already got these mature programs that, are obviously connecting with children. And so, it just seemed like such a natural opportunity to, instead of doing stuff on our own, find partners that we could leverage and that could leverage us to some, for work that we think could, further both our missions. So I think we're super excited in being able to work with you. But maybe from your perspectives, what opportunities have you seen or do you hope to see from this collaboration? And maybe, Jeff, I could get you to start off.
Absolutely. I think, in our experience working in so many schools with many different communities here in New Brunswick, we know that positive habits start at a young age. We typically used waste management education as an entry point to broader environmental stewardship and climate literacy connections. So we find the younger ages, recycling is something that they can really connect to and understand and have some autonomy in how things are done in their community. So we know that children influence their families even more so than our organizations can influence their parents, right? If they go back home at the dinner table, have a chat with their parents about what they did that day, they tell mom and dad that they threw up in the waste sorting bin and what happened. But those kind of stories can not only influence their families but also influence the community. And there's been some really positive outcomes from working with these schools. Another example I can bring out is a community in the Carleton County area in Florenceville in New Brunswick. For years, they struggled to recycle milk cartons. That particular waste commission just did not recycle milk cartons. So when I went to the school, they opened the custodian closet and it was filled from bottom to top with milk cartons stacked. They didn't want to throw them in and send them to the landfill. So I got there and I was trying to figure out, well, do they want me to put these in my car? Because that's going to smell like rotten milk. That's not going to be great. I need to find a solution here. So in that case, I called the Carleton Council of Canada and had a conversation. They called the commission. We got some of the industry partners involved, and we were happy to see during that same school year that county started to recycle milk cartons because of the grade 2 students that were asking questions, working with Gaia, and eventually working with community to make a change happen. So those type of stories and those type of collaborations are possible. And when they happen, it really sort of invigorates us to keep going and keeps us sort of passionate about the work that we do.
But I didn't know that story, and that's interesting because I think that our introduction to Gaia came through the Carleton Council and through the work that you have been doing with them. And, as we expanded to New Brunswick, I think they're the ones that reached out to make the introduction, I think, just based on the positive experience that they had with you. So that's super interesting that this has just been a continuum from that moment to the Carleton Council now to the work with circular materials.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels like it's growing.
Yeah, absolutely. Sarah, what opportunities do you see or hope to see from this collaboration?
Yeah, well, EcoSchools, it's all about partnerships. We know that it takes a lot of different people and organizations working together to move the needle forward. And, we are already working with Gaia Project and with Earth Rangers. And, we all kind of fill different gaps. We have different areas of expertise, different types of tools and resources that we're doing. So I think the beauty of the EcoSchools program is we are accessible across Canada. We can fill gaps where they exist. we can provide tools and resources. So when there are not organizations like the Gaia Project doing amazing work in New Brunswick, or the great work that Earth Rangers is doing across the country, what we can do is take those tools and resources and be able to share them broadly to schools to make that type of information and education accessible. So yeah, partnerships, this is a big thing that we're talking about, whether it's how to recycle properly in school, recycling is really complicated. It's it's one of the biggest challenges that we see in schools, though it's also kind of one of the most accessible types of education that we also see schools implementing. And so being able to engage with different people who have great solutions, great strategies, great programming, and be able to share that broadly, it really does help move that needle forward.
And that's awesome. I didn't know that if you guys had all worked together. So it's great to hear that it's not just circular materials you're working with, but there's lots of cross collaboration as well. Because I think, I don't think there's ever enough resources. I think we all know that. And also, to your point about recycling being complicated, I think it has been. I think the goal is to try and simplify it. And that's certainly our mission. And if we can work with you guys to get the message out about how it's simplifying, I think that's just so powerful. But Tova, I'll leave it to you to kind of add in and bring any additional thoughts to the conversation.
Sure. Well, I was thinking, about recycling is something that everyone thinks they know about, which is almost like the biggest threat to doing it properly, because it feels like something that we've been talking about for, decades. It's one of those things that feels kind of obvious and simple, but it hasn't been. And so, getting people to acknowledge that they might think they know more about recycling than they actually do, and kind of questioning some of the behaviors and habits and tactics that they're taking in their own households, and really kind of like re-educating themselves on the proper way to do things. I think it's kind of a challenge and a huge opportunity. I got a letter from the city of Toronto, I don't know, maybe 7 years ago, telling me that my recycling was consistently incorrect.
No way.
And I was like, okay, this is really bad. Like, if the president of Earth Rangers has contaminated recycling, then what chance does the rest of the city have to be doing it properly? So I went on to their Waste Wizard app at the time and went through everything to try to figure out what were the things that I was doing incorrectly. And I did discover I think 2 things that clearly I just did not understand. And it just really resonated with me that people think that recycling is simple and easy and that they're doing it correctly, but they may not be. So trying to kind of break through and start with kids and challenge some of those assumptions and maybe some of those habits that we think are correct but actually aren't is a really good place to start. And obviously right now with circular materials expanding and things becoming more consistent in jurisdictions, Absolutely. And now's the time to do it.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I totally agree with you. I think people do not embrace change, especially when it comes to recycling. So if they've been doing something for 10 or 15 years, getting them to do something different, even if it's better, even if there's more things they can put in, is always a bit of a challenge. But also to your point, I think now that we have the opportunity to recycle more, instilling that in kids and communicating that message and letting them bring that home to their parents, maybe that's our most effective method of changing those folks, is when their child tells them, actually, mom or dad, you're doing it wrong. This is what you should be doing. This thing actually does belong in the blue box, or it doesn't belong in the blue box.
Yeah, totally.
This one, I think all of you can contribute. It'd be interesting if there's any cross, collaboration on this as well. But, I think each of your organizations, has that approach to recycling education. And maybe what strategies have you found to be effective? And maybe Sarah, I can get you to start. What's worked from your point of view for EcoSchools Canada?
Sure, that's a great question. I mean, we do work with a large diversity of schools that require different types of support. So depending where they're located in Canada, again, streamlining hasn't happened across the board. And also where they are on their journey, the intervention might look a little bit different. But in general, our philosophy is really about building a foundation around learning and education, and then acting on that learning and turning it into action based on the school's needs, their interests, and whatever their goals might be. In general, there are some kind of best practices when we're talking about recycling education. So simple strategies like just making sure that your garbage bin and your recycling bin are paired, that it's really clear which one is the recycling and the garbage bin. We don't see that often at schools. Sometimes they're using a gray recycling bin and a blue recycling bin. One is for garbage, one is for recycling. So being really clear, also with really clear signage, is again, really foundational, important stuff, but then providing opportunities for students to really take a leadership role in that learning. They say, what is the saying? The best way to learn is to teach. And so, providing those opportunities for students to be engaged, to be creative, whether it's making a poster, implementing a presentation or assembly, creating some announcements to share that information. And also just making it fun and engaging is a great way to incentivize the activities as well. So we find things like tracking of waste practices and awarding classrooms with that carrot approach is really useful as well. And, with older students, we really see providing them an opportunity to take that learning a little more deep, connecting it to broader issues around social justice, allowing them to kind of really deeply learn or research about life cycle analysis and the cradle to cradle concept. It's really useful because they can understand what the impact is and then how they can take a role in making change. And, as they get older, students are really creative in the ways that they approach this issue and can come up with really cool solutions to the issues. And I think like the other thing, like when we're talking about recycling education as well, is we can't forget all those other R's, like reducing and using and repairing as well. It all kind of goes hand in hand together.
Well, I love how, I think what you're really talking about, especially with the younger kids, is making it tangible, like not just talking to the kids, but getting them involved and get them doing something, whether it be creating a poster or tracking waste, like making it real for them. So that, it just, and to your point, empowering them. I think that's super important. Cause I think there's lots of messages coming at kids. And if there's something proactive and tangible they can do, I think it'll be more meaningful for them.
If I can just
please.
to say, I agree completely. And the thing about waste that's really cool for young and older students is that it's really within their realm of influence. So we all create waste. That means that we all have some ability to make a change in the amount of waste that we're creating, and at least some ability to be able to learn and take ownership, to be able to learn how to sort it properly. There are big things going on in our world, especially when we're talking about climate and the environment, that are really outside of a student's realm of influence. So this is a really tangible, like you said, a really tangible thing that students can take ownership over and can really see an impact with.
Yeah, I completely agree. No, I appreciate that. And for any of you, please at any point feel if you've got a point to make, please feel free to jump in. And Jeff, maybe, you're unique here specifically as a science educator with a focus on climate change. How has that impacted your approach in terms of the Gaia Project?
Yeah, so any interaction we have with students, we can connect it to climate change, to taking action, to Sierra's point, to giving them some sort of autonomy and something that they can do to contribute. Waste is a topic that is seemingly simplistic, but it's very complex. So benefit of our approach, which is being on the ground, visiting the school, getting our hands dirty, looking at what they're actually creating for waste. And it's different every time. That's the challenge of this the program that we offer is we still find things in the waste stream that we don't know how the answer. We don't know what to tell them because, some of the packaging keeps changing and evolving, and we've had challenges here with glass in our region or styrofoam, things that some commissions will take and other ones won't. That was one of the really the celebrations we had around circular materials coming in here and bringing in a consistent program across our 12 commissions in New Brunswick. That was very welcome because it was hard to know exactly what commission you were in when you're in a different school every day to give them a consistent answer. But overall, last year we found that 60% of all the sorted waste could have been diverted through landfills from either composting, recycling. So there's a lot of work to do to divert all of that landfill waste. 29% was paper and packaging, what we found from last year's audits. So a ton of paper in the waste stream when it should be recycled. All schools here have paper recycling, but they're not all doing it or they're contaminating it. So there's never ending work to be done for waste education. The challenge that we face is giving teachers and students direction to make steps and not do everything all at once. Because a school year or a semester for that matter, you don't have a lot of time to work with. And then, summertime, everyone goes home and forgets about all the projects that they did, and it doesn't always kind of pick back up in the fall. So we try to give them consistent, small steps forward and look at one streamline that they want to attack or focus on and improve. And then, the beauty is that we get to work with them year over year, so we can come in and keep working on different projects each year and focusing on different streams. It's never ending work that needs to be done, but it's really important work, and it does influence the community, as I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and I appreciate the especially comments around glass and expanded polystyrene. So really grateful we've been able to deliver consistent collection for those materials in New Brunswick. And to your point about never ending, even with my own children, I'll catch them putting something in the garbage and be like, whoa, that does not belong there. And educating them, as well as, mother-in-law, father-in-law, like it really does seem like, we have to, and I think we even see this as we're trying to educate, we lower contamination rates. And if we lower or stop making the investments post education, they go right back up in a year or so. So, I do think there's this, and again, we're hoping that, with better communication, with province-wide communication, with integrated school programs, are going to be able to move that needle and make it so it's just this routine habit that everyone understands because it's so consistent from place to place. And so it's grateful to hear that consistency is helping places like New Brunswick, or maybe sounds like it was a bit more of a hodgepodge before of different approaches depending on the commission.
It was, and some of the commissions were more invested in education, others weren't. So, the accessibility of this type of programming across the province was inconsistent as well. So I'm happy to say in my 8 years at Gaia, I've seen it get better every year. But the schools that have, say, been doing this for 8 years, they figure it out most things, but there's still stuff they're working on, or, teachers can leave schools and there's turnover in staff. And it just seems like we need to keep doing this good work as long as we possibly can to make sure that students that graduate understand recycling properly.
Absolutely. If it's any solace, I still find myself with new packaging that I'm always not sure. You're not alone. And Tove, I don't want to leave you out of this conversation because I know that your work is specifically focused on protecting animals in the environment, and maybe just contribute. How do you incorporate that perspective into your work?
So I think our approach or our focus a lot of times is obviously kids and families need to understand the proper way to do things. And, we've been talking about that at length and some of the confusion that can happen and the need for kind of consistent and ongoing education. But at Earth Rangers, we focus a lot on the motivational piece. Like, what is the reason why kids are going to care about this when they're really busy and the easiest thing to do is just to throw something away? Why will they actually take the time to properly sort and recycle and do things in the way that they may have the knowledge to do, but not the motivation? And for us, that motivation is always animals. All kids, no matter where they come from, what their background is, have an inherent connection to animals. And if you can kind of leverage that connection and explain to them, how does this seemingly simple act of recycling actually positively impact the animals that you love, that is the way to get them to truly care and do it consistently, or at least in our belief and experience, that's what it's all about. So instead of saying you need to clean out and, properly clean and dry a peanut butter container, because that's the way that it will be sure to get recycled and not end up in landfill. We will talk about how, if you leave peanut butter in a container and then an animal smells it and then gets stuck in the container, how likely is that to happen? Maybe not super likely, but if that's the reason you need to scrub that container, then great. It's just as good of a reason as any. So we try to really leverage that motivational piece. And then also, we found a really effective tactic is seasonality. So kids, I think we all kind of think seasonally, but when it's after the holidays or it's daylight savings or whatever time of year it is, to really connect some of those more trickier pieces of garbage or waste that you may not know how to recycle that are more common at different times of year, really trying to leverage the fact that people are thinking about, their toy packaging or whatever it is, and really leveraging that seasonality piece as part of the educational cycle.
Yeah, super interesting. Halloween, lots of candy wrappers.
Yeah.
Again, something that we'll see collected more broadly in every jurisdiction. Yeah, super interesting. I think, I think in leveraging that, especially at schools and things like Halloween candy wrappers, we know that, around Halloween, there's going to be lots of those, and it's predominantly going to be eaten by kids. And so an opportunity to make sure that we can get that material into the recycling stream.
Yeah.
Just shifting gears, and I'll leave this open to anyone who wants to jump in and respond, but what are the challenges and opportunities that you've seen in your experience in bringing recycling curriculum to life? And happy for anyone to kind of jump in and start that conversation.
I mean, we find that kids love a little healthy competition. I think Sierra referenced this as well. So actually I'm pretty excited about it because I actually saw it in action. So we have every year we recreate the school assembly. And there's usually some kind of a competition element to it, like trivia or whatever. But in this year's show, there's a sorting game where we actually get to, we kind of go through the do's and don'ts of recycling, remind them of what the rules are, and then we get two kids up and we time them, and they actually do a sorting game live in the gym, and everyone's cheering and going crazy. And it's pretty fun. It's a very high pressure situation for the kids.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. We'll have to get you out to see one. But I think competition is very effective. And I think this was also mentioned earlier, but, kids feeling like they know something that adults don't is very empowering. And so, giving them a tidbit that is, one of the whole greasy pizza box. I think most parents put pizza boxes in the recycling consistently. At least that has been my experience when I'm at my friends' houses. And so we really stress that in the show because kids love to be able to tell their parents something that they don't know. And so they just gives them a feeling of empowerment and strength and agency. So finding those things and really getting them to go spread the word, I think is very motivating.
I think it's super interesting. I love that sorting game. I think we could use that for a bunch of different groups, not just kids. I love it. Jeff, Sierra, anything you guys want to add?
I just kind of going off of what Tova said, talking about the pizza boxes and also reference to the peanut butter container earlier. We create a lot of different types of waste, and a lot of it can be recycled, but knowing how to actually properly recycle it is super confusing. So this is one of the challenges that we certainly see in schools, knowing that you have to clean out the container, or, on our polystyrene or plastic items, seeing those little resin codes. Everyone thinks that resin code means that the item is intrinsically recyclable, but it may not be. It actually tells us what the type of plastic is, or, where does the straw go from the juice box? That's something we see a lot, or the cap on the water bottle. So kind of getting into that nitty gritty piece. It's not just, again, that poster saying plastic water bottles could be recycled, but they also you have to make sure that they're empty or they will not be recycled properly. So, those are some of the challenges that we see, but really pragmatically, just like starting young and being really repetitive really helps. And again, harkening back to what Jeff said, this is like a long haul game where we need to continuously be going in and doing this education with different teachers and with different students. So it really becomes ingrained because, just like all of us have kind of mentioned, we might not actually know at our age, even in like the sector that we're working in right now, where everything goes. But now we know, if we don't know, where to look for it at least. And I think like just being able to provide that guidance to schools and to students and teachers is really very simple, but very useful.
I think that's great. And Jeff, just before, I'm sure you've got something to add, just for our listeners, the straw goes back into the carton, just push it down, and that's great. And always put your caps on your bottles, and then we can make sure that we recycle both the bottle and the cap. Jeff, anything you want to add just to close this out?
Yeah, I think that it's a massive opportunity with our facilities and our schools. We talk a lot about residential recycling, but there's a lot of issues here regionally with, our apartment buildings, our businesses that sometimes recycle nothing. So that's changing now with circular materials, which is great, but those folks need awareness and education. And I think if you can look to a facility like a school and see how they're doing it successfully and model after that, to me, school and education is a place where we should look at sort of how ideal society should look like and how sustainable society should look like. If schools can figure it out, we all can figure it out. So there's so much opportunity there. There's also a lot of opportunity for teachers to receive funding, to participate in these really exciting type of project-based learning curriculums that are a little outside of the box of the traditional way of teaching. And I know a lot of teachers are looking for that right now. So there's plenty of opportunity out there, but there's still a lot of challenges, as we mentioned. One that I want to mention that I think we've kind of left off the radar today is the custodian staff. It's so important at a school to have custodians on board to make them aware of changes that are happening. And just like anything else, sometimes you might be met with resistance, or sometimes you might be met with a custodian that's really excited to support. But if they're not supporting, it's probably not going to work out for you. That's what we found here. We've even seen situations in schools where they are recycling in the school and they're sorting everything out. And then at the end of the day, it's all going in one big bag and it's going in one big bin, and off in the truck it goes. And the students sometimes figure that out. And that's how disheartening is it for students to start a great recycling program and then all for nothing. So I think it's important to be authentic as possible when we approach our educational programs and be transparent with students about the whole recycling process and the importance of all the R's, like Sierra mentioned as well.
Well, you just got me. I think like that was a really good point, because that doesn't just apply to schools. I think like society at large has heard too many kind of like horror stories about thinking that you're making a difference, going through all of the rigmarole of sorting things properly, and then finding out that the recycling wasn't going where you think. So I think having circular materials be like a consistent communicator and really trying to tell positive stories about the difference that recycling is making can help to counteract that. But there's definitely been some damage done. And I think that people are a little bit cynical about waste diversion in general, more so than they used to be because of some of those things. And so we should be telling good news stories and making sure that people have confidence in the system. And I think, partnerships like these and organizations that are, charities that are trusted with kids, working with circular materials, getting other businesses involved, everyone telling a consistent story and the public having confidence in those stories will really help.
No, I think that's totally true. And I think, so we're conscious of that. And I think a couple things. One is, as we go forward, being really transparent about what's happening with these materials and where they're going and how much is recycled. But I think ultimately one of our larger objectives is to actually have our material returned back to producers. And there's really two components to that. One is it'll create a more circular economy. That's the ultimate objective, right? It's the best environmental use, so we can get those materials recycled and then put back into another product. But it will also make it more tangible or the average consumer, because I could tell them it's being recycled by X company or Y company. Some recycler, they don't know who these companies are. They're big value partners of mine, but they don't know them. But if they hear a big consumer brand is taking our material and incorporating back and recycled content for that product they're buying on the shelves, and they can make that connection, I think that's just so meaningful and powerful. And I think it gets to that, and hopefully it'll help deflate or deflect some of that cynicism, because it's so important that everyone understand that this is actually leading to a very productive outcome. And despite what you might hear in the news, and because we get, news and stories about, what's happening with recycling across all sorts of different jurisdictions, it can muddle the message. And I think we've got a huge opportunity. And I just also want to build on Jeff's point on the schools. I think it's super important to involve all the schools. And I think what's really different in circular materials compared to other programs is we actually have relationships with schools. We're actually involved in the recycling of schools. They're part of our program. And so it hasn't been as much of a focus in the days. We've been focusing more on these partnerships. But I think as we go forward, how can we leverage that relationship we have with the schools and really, make sure that we're building this kind of all-encompassing system so that whatever message is going home with the resident is also getting that same message getting transmitted to school. And for the child and for the kid, it's the same message. And if they're getting the same message in the place where they're either going to school or at home all the time, I just think it's going to redouble our efforts and make us more effective in communicating to those kids. Okay, I want to make sure there's a couple things I want to cover, and I know we've been having a lot of really good discussion, and I know we're going to be short of time soon, but maybe quickly, how do things change for different age groups? And I think some of you have talked about that already. I think, Sarah, you touched on that in terms of what might change, but does anyone else want to just talk about, what changes for different age groups and in terms of, tactics or how you're conducting your programs?
One of the things, our core programs and the most of our programs are geared towards elementary age kids, but we do have an Earth Rangers teen program as well. And, what we've noticed is that it's not as different as you might think. All young people are looking for direction. They want to know, they want to understand the issue and know what they can do. The complexity of what they're capable of doing can change over time. But it was actually I thought that my hypothesis was that teens would want to take on much bigger, more complex projects. And in some cases that's true. But I actually find that a lot of people, even adults, don't even know where to start. And so starting with the basics, I think if you start too complex, it actually gets people kind of nervous and uncomfortable. And then they feel like maybe they're not equipped to do it. So I don't think there's as much of a difference as we think, although I will say that teens like to talk about what they're doing and really showcase their efforts. Whereas I think kids, it's enough for mom and dad to see it at home. Whereas teens want that kind of sense of pride and accomplishment, maybe reflected with their peer group and in the school. So I think, celebrating their actions is really important.
Yeah, I totally agree. Jeff, Sarah, anything you guys want to add?
I'd say one of the challenges we face with the older students is if we don't get in front of them early enough, or if they don't have, a teacher passionate in these type of concepts, they can start to become withdrawn from these types of challenges and issues. I think this was mentioned earlier, but the eco-anxiety element of everything that's happening with climate change and the environment, there is a certain age for teenagers when they'll just shut down and they're sort of becoming adults like we are. They're harder to change. They're harder to shift their behaviors. So we find, we get in front of a group of grade 3 to 5 students. Most of the class is really engaged. They're absorbing everything. They're like sponges. Late middle school, early high school, you might get 2 or 3 students that are really into this. They're, passionate about it. And a lot of students that are just kind of sitting back and maybe, not as engaged. But that can change for sure if you're able to show them that they can do something, that they have a role to play. It's just I find this waste education piece is really important to get in front of students early to kind of create that anchor that they can build on in the later years. And teachers is another factor. Teachers at elementary versus high school are also very different. They expect different things in the programming that we offer. A lot of elementary students or teachers are saying, just come in, do whatever you want to do. I'm happy to have time to sit at my desk and you can do your thing. High school teachers might want things to be a little more heavily linked to the curriculum and, be able to check boxes for outcomes when you're visiting them. So those are the kind of factors we think about at different age levels.
Yeah, and it's interesting that each of you have kind of picked up on this environmental anxiety issue. It's unfortunate, but it's good that you mentioned it, because I think it's one of the challenges for us going forward is just, how do we instill hope in kids at a time when some of the larger messaging can be so negative. So I don't want to get too much, because I think there's more to. That's a whole episode to unpack right there.
But I will
sure,
interrupt, but just that it's, I think it's like equally important to address like environmental anxiety and apathy. It's like, if you think that there's nothing that can be done, then you're much less likely
to the apathy.
Exactly, to try. And then the anxiety is can become like overwhelming. And then, you just don't know where to start. But sometimes I think that apathy is even more kind of dangerous, just in terms of feeling like there's just no point at all. So anyway.
And it's really a flip side to that anxiety, right? You're apathetic because you think there's nothing you can do, or the problem is too big for one person. Yeah. I honestly feel like we could do a whole multi-stage episode or multi-episode talk just about that. Sierra, I don't want to leave you out of the conversation. I'm sure you want to add something in. Please feel free.
Sure. I mean, I think a lot of what has already been said rings true for me as well. Providing that foundational learning and that opportunity for creativity at all ages, I think is really important. With older students in particular, we certainly see that this type of work is siloed. So it might be like a classroom that's doing this, or possibly like a small eco team. And it's, they're trying to engage the whole school. It's much easier to engage a whole school in this type of learning and action with younger students and in elementary schools. Really trying to tap into the thing that excites students is one way of doing it. What is it that's going to spark their excitement and interest? So like advocacy activities with older students, we've seen things, again, kind of extending on that recycling piece. So, it's important to recycle, but it's also important to reduce the types of waste that we're creating. So instituting like plastic water bans and seeing young students going to their school board to advocate for this type of work, or extending a recycling campaign and engaging in a clothes swap or a repair cafe, are the types of things that we're really seeing that kind of spark some interest and engagement more broadly with older students. So yeah, it's hard to always engage everyone, but trying to, again, tap into the things that work for each unique community is really important.
Yeah, kind of a flexible approach, understanding communities are different. What's going to work? Totally agree. Okay, we're running close to time, but I have a couple last questions. So I'm maybe going to ask people just to kind of limit their answers to 30 seconds or around that. And Sierra, I'll start with you. I think this is kind of key to a lot of the discussion we've had. We've been talking a lot about what happens at school, but how can families reinforce recycling habits at home to support what children learn at school? And Sarah, I'll let you get the first opportunity to answer.
Sure. And I mean, I think it goes kind of both ways, right? We see that when kids are really passionate about something that they're doing at school, they also bring that passion home, and sometimes that education as well. We really see that being able to broaden the scope of these in-school campaigns to engage families is really successful, whether that's just a newsletter home, letting them know about how to implement a proper recycling in the household, or if it's to engage them in like a really fun extended campaign around how we can recycle really well and participate in it, not just at school, but at home as well. And, providing educational materials to households. It's really important, in education, we say it's really important to model good behaviors. And as teachers and educators, we want to make sure that we're doing the thing that we're asking our students to do. And in the same way, it's really that philosophy obviously goes into the household. So really trying to find ways to bolster that type of work in the house as well. Sorry, I think I might have gone over 30 seconds.
You're quite fine. Tova?
I'll keep it quick. I agree with everything that Sierra just said. I think, making someone responsible for it is helpful. If one of the children or, as many children as there are in the household, it is their responsibility to kind of be the recycling wardens at home. It just makes they take ownership of it. And then also, I think this was referenced earlier, but a lot of times it's not about actually knowing everything. It's knowing where to get the information. So having, the kind of the website, the 1-800 number, whatever, on hand to be able to find out the information, and everyone knowing where to get that is really important.
Yeah, I totally agree. Jeff, anything to add?
Yeah, just as a parent of young children, I mean, we read a lot of stories to our daughter, get books, focus on this. There's so much content out there. You can look for a book about recycling or a couple of books about a different type of recycling, get that awareness early. And then the older kids and children, redeemables here in New Brunswick are a good way to incentivize your kids. If you put them in charge of something where they're actually getting some money back, they're probably going to be more likely to keep up with that chore. So those are a couple pointers, I'd say.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I've experienced that in my own household. I just want to take, and reflect on this conversation, really appreciate it. A couple of things I'm taking away. One is the sorting game. I love that idea and want to find a way to take that in different directions. I also really appreciate just the conversation around schools and how we need to gauge schools, and not just teachers, but custodians, all staff. There's an opportunity there. And also just, I think we want consistent programs, but also need to identify that communities are different. We need to be flexible in our approach. And so those are kind of the three things I'm going to take away from this conversation, and really think about how we can continue to improve and adjust our programs to take advantage of those learnings. But I think the most appropriate way to end this conversation is hopefully on an optimistic tone. And maybe I could ask each of you, and maybe Jeff, I'll get to lead off. What do you hope for the future of recycling and recycling education?
Yeah, keep it simple here. There's definitely a vision of zero waste schools to get to a point where all those challenges, all those barriers, looking forward in the future are met. And we built the systems around the schools so that we're not creating so much waste. The other side of it is there's going to be more jobs. There's going to be more green careers around the waste sector that young people are going to be learning about and going to be engaging with. So connecting the career pathways of the future around reduction, innovation, sustainability.
Tova?
I'll just say that, to kind of shift the narrative, instead of recycling being this mundane thing that you do, it's actually your opportunity as an individual to do something that really means something multiple times a day. How many things can you say that about? So if we can just think about it like that and be really motivated and inspired and all feel proud of ourselves when we do it properly, I think that would make a big difference, both for our kind of mental health and sense of empowerment, and also having a real impact, to Jeff's point, in creating, zero waste communities.
Totally agree. And last word to you, Sierra.
Yeah. And I totally echo everything that both Jeff and Tova have said. Really simplified, feedback is that this streamline recycling that's happening across Canada slowly is a really exciting first step in establishing this as an accessible and successful process within every school. I'm really excited. We have teachers who live in different municipalities than where they're teaching, and it gets really confusing. So this streamlining, I think, is really exciting, and moving towards where this is perhaps fun and exciting, like Tova said, but just everyone knows how to do it, and it's really established in our everyday behavior, is, our goal. And then, of course, moving to this no waste school system and society is a real blue sky vision, but I think where we're all trying to move the needle in the future.
I think that's a great way to end off. I think we all want to move the needle. I just want to end by just thanking all of you. This has been a fantastic conversation, and really, for me, super inspiring to hear all the good work you're doing, and just think about the opportunities we have as a group to move that needle forward and really start to just increase awareness and hopefully really instill in kids just the opportunity for them to empower them and take charge and make a positive contribution to the environment and society. So I appreciate all the work you're doing and look forward to coming back and having a further conversation in the future once we've developed this partnership and we've implemented more programs together, and just touch base, see how it's doing, and talk about where we can go from there. So thanks, everyone. I want to, this course brings us to the conclusion for this episode of the Circular Exchange. I want to thank all our guests, and I want to thank you for tuning in. Again, together we're building a more circular future, one conversation at a time. To learn more, visit circularmaterials.ca or check out the links in our show notes. Until then, we'll see you next time.